Hey audio people, MrAyrit here. Welcome back to the channel. Now this is going to be a little bit different of a video. As you can see, I'm sitting in front of my home theater here. Now predominantly I have been a headphone enthusiast when it comes to my audiophilia. However, with my new home here, which I've lived in for about a year, I did have the opportunity to buy with the house a pretty, I don't know, I guess a decent home theater system, or what I thought was a decent home theater system. And lately, over the summer here, I've been interested in experimenting a little bit with that, just since I'm using it more and just because I have the opportunity to do a little bit more speaker listening in this new environment. So I'm just going to go through this video the home theater that I had and why I'm deciding to move away from it, and I'm just going to a stereo setup. Okay, so basically what I want to show you is kind of what components that I have with my home theater system, and I just want to let you know like what differences have I found as I've experimented with it, and what is the home theater or stereo setup that I'm going to just keep as I use this space going forward, and why I'm switching from my home theater down to just a 2-channel setup. So let's start the tour and I'll show you what I had, and then we'll talk about what I'm moving to. Okay, so let's start at kind of the heart of, the home theater, which is your receiver, or that's what it was anyway. And the one that I had, and this came with my house, or I chose to buy it with the house, is a Denon AVR S750H. Now, this is seemingly, a pretty modern home theater, right? 7.1 Bluetooth, it does Spotify Connect and all that stuff. It's got 4K HDR pass-through capabilities, all that stuff. So I thought it would be perfect because I did initially have like a PS5, Xbox Series S, Nintendo Switch. I had all that stuff running through this down here, but I'm choosing to simplify my gaming setup, and honestly I'm just gonna stick with the Series S Xbox. I just think that's plenty for me, but that's kind of another tale. But either way, this is what I had, and it was functioning just fine. The one thing that I would point out to people, or that I would just give you a tip on with any receiver, is if you're struggling to get the HDR to work like I was, there are some settings inside of this where you have to go through and you have to like disable something, and then it will allow it just to pass through. That was an issue that I had with this initially. Okay, TV is nothing really special. It's just an on TV from Walmart. It's a 75-inch 4K HDR model, right? It was maybe like $600, and I always wanted just a huge TV so I could really make this a home theater experience, and that has worked flawlessly for me up to this point. So things that came with it, Bose center channel. It doesn't seem like anything fancy. I think it was the model number was something like a VSC 10 or something like that. It looks like they're going for about 60 bucks used. It seems like an older model. In-wall speakers, and this is really the reason why I started experimenting with other things, is because I didn't like these speakers very much, and these are Polk RC85Is. Now, the main issue that I've had with these, and you can see that I've kind of replaced the screws on here, is there was a constant rattle that I just couldn't get rid of. Now, these things put out quite a bit of bass, honestly, but the issue is that this little plastic chintzy housing that this thing sits in, I just couldn't get it to stop rattling. No matter what I did, I couldn't solve that, and that just was driving me crazy, which is what prompted me to try some other speakers out down here, but I'll get to that here in a moment. We might as well go ahead and talk about the sub that's down here, and this is, I'm not even sure what the model is, but it's a 10-inch powered Cerwin Vega. It seems like it's got some age on it, but it's pretty powerful. Definitely had plenty of rumble to it. That wasn't an issue at all. Now, as far as the rear channels and side channels, these were placed in the ceiling, and you can see I've just got kind of like the acoustic paneling. It's kind of more commercial style ceiling, but I've got, these are the RC80Is, and I've got a set there. And then back here, kind of on the end of the room, I've got another pair of them back here. Okay, so that's what those guys look like up there. I didn't really have any problem with these. Honestly, the rear channels are so far back because my whole room here from end to end, this is it's about 27 feet. So it's pretty big room. And honestly, I never really even noticed those rear channels back there. These guys I can notice, and they're pretty much even, as you can see with my couch here. So those were quite noticeable, but not the rear speakers. So the 7.1 with the speakers being all the way back there, that didn't seem to really make sense for me. Okay, so why the change? Well, outside of the rattle in those in-wall speakers, I decided I wanted to test out, just having some other speakers and just seeing what kind of audio quality I could get out of those. So what I found was I purchased these tower speakers here, and those are the Yamaha S809s. I bought them on sale from Adorama for like 230 bucks or something like that. Again, that Adorama pricing is strange. They're regularly $900 for a pair or something like that, but it seems like they're pretty regularly on sale. So I just wanted to try them. And then it just happened to, those are the S803s, which are the bookshelf version of that same series from Yamaha, and those just came up locally on Facebook, and I ended up trading a set of headphones for those, so I just picked them up just to compare. Now I also have a set of ELAC, I don't remember the model number, but those are the smaller, like the cheapest ELAC bookshelves you can get, and those migrated up to the bedroom because I didn't like them as much down here. So let me just kind of show you the Yamahas here real quick, and then we'll talk about kind of sound impressions and what changed, and then I'll talk about some more of my evolutions in that. Okay, so a little bit about these Yamahas here. They're about 40 inches tall. They weigh about 30 pounds a piece. They're 8 ohms and 90 dB sensitivity, and they've got 3 5-inch woofers and then a 1-inch soft dome tweeter. And the touted frequency response for these are 37 hertz to 26 kilohertz. Okay, they do have a front port on them. They do come with magnetic grills. They look similar to the ones that are on the S803s here, but they're larger, obviously. And then just one thing that's kind of interesting is they're set up for Dolby Atmos. So they have these little Atmos things that you can set on top. And then they've got 2 sets of binding posts in the back. The bottom ones are for these speakers, and then the top ones are for those Atmos top firing speakers, which I don't have. Quality, build quality seems good. They're MDF. I'm not the expert on speakers, but that's kind of the basics on what goes with these Yamaha S809s. Now the S803s are pretty similar. The main thing I would say about them is they don't seem to have as much top end or low end, right? But it looks like same tweeter and similar woofer, but they definitely don't go as low as these do, and they don't have as much sparkle up high. So when it comes to listening impressions with the S809s, I just thought that they sounded much more dynamic. I thought they had a nice boost in clarity compared to my previous setup, and they did not sound nearly as compressed as the audio coming from the in-walls and the Bose center channel. And that was the main finding that I had, is I felt no matter how I tried to set up the surround sound, I always felt like it just sounded more compressed than the Yamahas coming out of their own DAC and amplifier. Okay, I did think the Yamahas were better than the Polk in-walls. Those in-walls, they're really dull sounding speakers. they were okay as side, as front speakers with a center channel for movies and things like that. But for music, I really found them to be lacking in clarity and detail, and in just soundstage and imaging. I didn't think they did very well at all. And that would be probably the biggest thing that I took away from this is these typical consumer receivers, and I guess I can't speak for all of them because I've only tried out a couple of them, but I don't think that they try real hard to throw a good soundstage and imaging, because I mean, you have the other speakers that make that work, right? So whenever I hooked up, 2 stereo speakers with a DAC and a dedicated amp, I just thought the imaging was so much crisper and just so much more fluid than with the current setup here. Now, one thing that I thought could be the issue with this is that it's a Bose center channel, right? And so I actually bought I don't remember what, the C803 or whatever, the same Yamo line, the center channel. I ended up buying that on Prime Day to try that out too, just to see if it was a center channel thing. And no, I still didn't think so. So I sent that back, and what I decided to do was to spend some time watching some movies, going from surround sound to stereo and just seeing which I preferred. And honestly, I preferred the stereo. Is it as immersive? I don't know. I mean, you obviously don't get those same sounds behind you, but I would say if you've never tried a decent stereo setup, granted, this is still pretty budget, what I have going on here, and these speakers, they're $230 speakers. I just checked, they're $300 on Amazon right now. Those paired with like a $100 amp, and I'm pretty impressed with what they can do imaging and soundstage wise. And for me, I feel like the continuity between the image is just more fluid, and I feel like there's just more resolution throughout, and it just sounds like it's just more dynamic, and just it doesn't draw me out of things the way the compressed surround sound speakers sounded for me personally. And this was running, uncompressed 5.1, uncompressed 7.1, Neural X, whatever that is, Dolby Digital. I tried all these different surround sound modes, and I still never thought that the quality just wasn't as good as just through these Yamo tower speakers with a decent DAC and an amp attached to them. So what am I using for a DAC and amp up here? Okay, so for a DAC, I'm using the Soundcause SGD1, and the reason why I'm using this is, one, because I had it, and I still need to do a separate review just for this, but it's also got a remote so I can volume control it, because the amplifier that I'm choosing to use is the Feliks Audio HD A1, which I purchased used on eBay for like $100 or something like that. Now you can see I tried the IEMA A07 as well, and I tried the Emotiva Bass X A100. Now, I'm going to do a separate video comparing those amplifiers, but those are the 3 that I kind of chose to test with. I do have also in IEMA A09 or something like that, but that's up in the bedroom, okay? But I still didn't like it as much as any of these. But the Feliks is the one that I'm keeping. So a $100 amp with a $300 DAC, at least that's what I bought it for, used on the market. And for me, that sound just blows the surround sound away. No competition at all for music, and I think it gives the movies a run for its money as well. Okay, so takeaways for me from just this experience of testing this stuff out. Well, I guess here's the thought that I'll put in your head, is if you've always kind of wanted a nice or decent surround sound system. I mean, we're talking the surround sound stuff that's here, this is probably $2,000 worth of stuff. So I would say it's a mid-level consumer system. for all of the trouble of getting it set up and having speakers in the ceiling and running all those wires and things like that, which I didn't have to do because it came with the house. If you just feel like you're missing out on something, or you feel like you wish you could have it but your space doesn't quite work for it or something like that, what I would urge you to do is to buy a decent set of stereo speakers and get a decent DAC and a decent amplifier and try that first. And then if that still doesn't suit your needs, then maybe you could start looking at like a 5.1 or 7.1 setup or something like that. But for me, these Yammos on that amp and that DAC, they go low enough that I don't think they need a subwoofer. They sound great for movies. They sound great for music. They are perfect for just the casual gaming that my son and I do down here. And it's just so much simpler than the surround sound setup. Now, obviously, my situation is a little bit different because I didn't have to install it, but certainly starting from scratch, I would just go this way. And even, honestly, now I'm gonna sell all this surround sound stuff and hopefully recoup some money that I can put towards something else, or at the very least, it'll cover the cost of my new system down here. Now, the most expensive piece of this system, right, is the Soundcause DAC. But I feel like you could easily get away with something like a Topping E30 or some other $100 DAC with just single-ended outputs and a remote, and I think it would be almost just as good. I mean, I do like the Soundcause DAC, but whether it's worth $300 just for this setup, I don't know if you're not using the balance and things like that. So this is not really a review of anything in here. It's more of just this is my kind of home theater journey in my new space. And I really just wanted to put this out there to help you maybe form an opinion on if you want to go, you know, full surround sound, or if maybe you could just get away with a stereo system. And personally, and maybe it's just my preference, I like the stereo better. I think it sounds better. I think it's easier to live with, it's easier to set up, and ultimately I think it'd be cheaper than most surround sound systems that you would get, unless you get a really cheap kind of box home theater system, but then I can tell you the audio quality is not even going to come close to touching what these Yammos can put out. So that's just my experience. I will have some more in-depth reviews on some of this gear here. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing if you want more audio related content. And you know, I'll be doing some more speaker stuff, and I'm experimenting a little bit more with audio. So thank you for your time, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.